Okay, so I'd like to know the view of the alt-right towards education and science. It seems like everything they say and everything they do points to these things, points to education and points to science. Education isn't just math and English, it's philosophy, it's everything, it's history, it's education. It's everything you present to a child to make him grow into the adult that could, help their cause. So education is a lot more broad than simply going to school. That's just one part of education. So everything fits. They use science for race realism and other particular characteristics, but it seems like it's just something that they use to advance the movement. See, the thing is that Richard Spencer himself doesn't seem to actually be opposed to most of the sciences. He seems to only bend when being told to bend by the other outriders. And so, at least if you ask me, it seems like the movement is primed towards a pure science stance. And that's what I'd like to explore. I'd like to know if they're at all interested, if the people who consider themselves alt-right are at all interested in actually going into a full science view of the world, because most of them are not even religious. Some of them kind of believe in God, but a lot of them are not at all religious. There's the conservative converts, they still hold their religious beliefs, but most of the alt-right, and you could argue me, although I don't consider myself alt-right, I'm just someone who sympathizes with the idea, and clearly the world's not going well, and if the alt-right's the only movement that's going to do something, then I'd rather join the movement that does something than the movement that does nothing. At least I have a chance of existing in the future with this particular movement. So most of us are not actually religious. We just like the idea of, we just like what Christianity brought to the West. And that's very important here, is that we make a distinction between the religion and its positive impacts. So we have this thing where we pick out the good things and the bad things from any situation, which is exactly what you should do. At every given time, you shouldn't say, oh, this is bad, this is good. You should say, well, this part is good, so we're going to take that. And this part is bad, so we're just not going to do that. That's what you should always do, which is exactly how science works. Science is just a process by which you check what's good and what's bad. And then you take the good stuff, and that becomes what you use, and the bad stuff, you just stop using it. Why would you keep using the bad stuff when you know what's good? But then you get into things like, this is apparently something that was a controversy on the stream. Richard Spencer kind of went into it, but then kind of backed off. But I don't exactly know what he thinks. I'd really like for him to flesh it out and to be a little more strong in his arguments. He's too malleable. That's the reason why people don't see him as a leader, because he's too malleable. He bends too quickly. He bends too easily. Like, he's not leading. He's not telling the people, no, you're wrong on this. So the thing that they went on was child pornography. And child pornography and pedophiles. And the claim made is that, well, there's been studies that claim that pedophiles who view child pornography are less likely to abuse children. Child pornography already exists. It's already done. It's already created. The damage has already been done. Those kids might have already been grown and have already been dead. So the abuse is done. There is no reason as to why we shouldn't use past abuse to stop future abuse. And those people don't go away simply because of wishful thinking. They don't just go away. Pedophiles still exist. And they're still going to exist. And they'll exist for as long as you don't take care of the problem, if you will. And I do not mean death. I simply mean that you have to know who these people are, and you have to make sure that these people do not abuse new children. That's the most important bit here. Do not abuse new children. It's the future that matters, not the fucking past. What do we care about the past? That doesn't matter. It's something that happened in the past. It's already done. The damage is done. It's gone. And now we're supposed to act as though we can't use the past to prevent future damage? It's not even, I don't even care about, it's not a moral thing. It's a pragmatic thing. Pragmatically speaking, you do not want this to happen in the future. You can't change the past. It's already gone. So use it for the future. And if the best way to do this is to use pre-recorded child pornography to stop new pedophiles, and you have to also remember this, for them to get this child pornography, they have to register. So now we know who they are. That doesn't mean we can arrest them or kill them or blah, 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 but we know who they are. So we can move them to a place or just set their lives up in a way where we know they can't offend. Treat it like a normal mental illness. some mental illness go way beyond the scopes of standard behavior. They go crazy. And so you take care of them. However, that ends up by being best for everybody. Because pedophiles still do work. They still do useful work. And so now what's the trade-off? Are we supposed to just kill anyone who's claimed to be a pedophile? Or do we just, okay, do your labor, as long as you don't abuse anybody, stay in your corner, no one's going to give a shit. Because on top of that is that not everybody's going to come out as a pedophile. So they still exist, but then because of your strong stance and we're not going to stand for this, well, you just miss all those people. And then you not standing for is exactly what causes more abuse. Okay? You have to stop, you have to remove intent and consequence. Okay? You may intend to do one thing, but that does not mean that the consequences of your actions will actually give you that result. What matters is the result. What matters is that we lower the number of children being raped. That's what matters. However that gets done is irrelevant. It's the fact that it gets done. And if it gets done through pre-recorded child pornography, then that's it. That's the solution. What do you want me to tell you? I didn't make the world. I didn't make the videos. I didn't make the pedophiles. It's not me. Okay? I don't believe in them. I believe in the research. And that's what the research says. That's the whole point of research. For us to know how to solve problems. So if we're going to solve that problem, use the research to solve that problem. And stop moral pandering. Stop doing the same thing the left is doing and act as though, the morality and the ethics, my feelings as the alt-righter. No. Solve the problem. Solve the problem. Stop bitching and just solve the problem. That's the important bit. So that's one of the main examples of the somewhat hypocritical way that the alt-right is going, where it's, oh yes, the truth and the science and the studies have shown this to us. But then the instant that it doesn't go the exact way they wanted it to go to begin with, they just let it go. That's not a good thing. Okay? You're not going to create a good movement by doing this. And so part of this is that since the left is completely going anti-science, this is a huge negative for them. And it's a huge positive for everybody else. Because it means that if we adopt these scientific principles, that means that we always have the upper hand. We have the pragmatic end. This means that everything we do, if we were to take this particular stance, would work. Which is the whole point of pragmatism, is that it works. So at every turn, every time someone criticizes us, we can just say, but it works. We achieved the goals we were supposed to achieve. Look at you. You went against us and you didn't achieve anything. And at every turn, this will be a cost, an economic cost, and a societal cost to them, but not to us. And since the alt-right is always considered as the enemy, then everything the alt-right does is considered as bad. So they're going to try to do the opposite of you. So if you're successful, what are they going to do? They're going to willingly maim themselves in order to just not be the alt-right. It's, at least if you ask me, I think it's the perfect strategy. If people were to be into it, and as I've given with the pedophile example, it seems like the alt-right isn't, it's not, it's there, it's close. It eloquates most of the stance that you should eloquate to get towards science, but it doesn't quite burst the bubble. There's still a bit of moral and ethics put into this, which is kind of breaking it kind of breaks the forwardness, you know, it breaks the improvement of the group, which is very bad. It's not good. It's not good. It is not good. And so if there was someone that wasn't, or even Richard Spencer, but it seems as though Richard Spencer bends too easily. Like he's trying to please too many people at the same time, and that kind of breaks him. And so we would need someone to be like an actual leader and say, no, you're making a big mistake here. This is a good thing. You want to prevent rape? That's how we will prevent rape. So do that. How are we even bargaining this? This doesn't make any sense. You're not going to lower rape by just ignoring the problem. It doesn't work. Reality doesn't disappear because you don't want to look at it. So it's always better to concentrate on actual reality. Which brings us to the second topic, which is education. All of this is a problem of education. I don't think that the alt-right is necessarily opposed to all these ideas or the scientific forwardment, but it seems like they don't have the philosophical education to go through with it. They're still stuck in somewhat the old way of seeing things. They haven't yet gone past the very thing that brought us here to begin with, which is the moral and ethics pandering. Stop pandering. Stop trying to make yourself seem as, oh, we will save everything instantly forever. No. Problems exist. Problems are always going to exist. It's your job to point out those problems and do the best that you can to mitigate them. That's it. That's all you can ever do. And you have to understand the advantages and the disadvantages of you performing those actions. Not everything is just advantages. Most things are advantages and disadvantages. So you have to decide whether or not you're ready to pay the cost to do this. And to make these decisions, you need education. You need to know what's important. What are you willing to trade to get something? So part of this is, it would be hugely important if the alt-right were to concentrate on these kinds of things, because as we know, the next generation is what matters. And so we need to educate the next generation, and the generation after that, and the generation after that, and the generation after that. Like, we have to create a stable system that would exist for as long as possible to make sure that they are the ones that survive it. The way you would do that is through education. Education is hugely important. Which makes me wonder as to why there's not more concentration on creating educational materials for homeschooling. In the West, it's US and Canada, homeschooling is legal. You're allowed to do it. And so the only barrier now is time, resources, and educational books. Educational books are not cheap. And they're kind of stuck with the current curriculum, which, they wouldn't need to if resources were to be created for them. And so it seems like it would be a very good thing to do to have resources created for them that would come at a much cheaper price, because books are expensive. School curriculums are very expensive. And the older the children get, the more expensive it gets. So it would be nice to have resources that are cheap and geared towards actually creating children that have the knowledge required to actually be useful. As I've stated at the beginning, school is not just what you do during the school time, during the predefined schooling. It's everything. It's, do you open a door for someone or not? It's everything you do in your entire life. Like, what does it mean to help? What does it mean to have a charity? What does it mean to start a business? How do you start a business? It's another very important thing that isn't being taught in school. Which the high school should be entirely a business school. Business school should be high school. High school should be business school. Most of the things we learn in high school are completely useless for the average person. And most of the things that you learn in high school happens in business school anyway. And it would teach you things like statistics and saving money and making loans. And these are all very important things. Way more important than most of the calculus that we learn and the shitty history that we learn. And because they just don't teach us that much of it. They just have a class to make the claim that they have a class. It's not that great. And these are way more important. And they're actually useful. They actually help everyone around them. And so don't think that education is just mathematics and language courses and the standard schoolings. It's education is your entire life. It's how you as a being can help everyone you. Or as the individualists, the liberalist would put it, how do you as an individual help your collective? How do you help the people around you? What makes you important? I guess that's really the thing that I'm coming at. What makes you as an individual important to the people around you? Why should you be valued, and why should you value the people around you? And so part of this is not just showing people what is a good thing. Part of this is also showing what happens if you don't act in a good manner. Like, what does it mean to not do this? Because that's also very important. People don't just learn through, well, that's the good thing. People need to see the contrast. They need to see that, okay, so if we don't do this, then what happens? Do we all die? And then the answer would just be, well, you don't all die, but you do have significantly harsher, and less fulfilling lives. And so over time, every small action matters. And if you are unwilling to help the people around you, then the people around you will be unwilling to help you. That's not a good deal for anyone. So it is much better for them to know, to have some kind of general etiquette as to how they are useful to each other. And what it means to have work ethic, and why do you work, and you don't work just for money. That's a very bad outlook on life. If you're stuck with it and you have no choice and you have to just work for money, then sure, it's better than dying. But that shouldn't be the goal. The goal shouldn't be to just work for money. The goal should be to work because you know that you are making a difference. You know that if you weren't there working, this business might not even exist. And so your actions in that business matter. It doesn't matter if you're cleaning or if you're cooking or if you're garbage man or if you're the president of a country. It doesn't matter. The bit that matters is that you do your job, and the bit that matters is that when you do your job, it helps everybody else around you do theirs. And it increases your salary. Because if you do your job better, that means that you provide good value. And the more value you provide, the more money that exists for everyone around you. And so it's always a good thing to have the will to do something and the will to help and to not be afraid of talking to people. And I don't mean being annoying, because that's one of the things, like if we were to get into the whole social dynamics, I can understand that sometimes it gets annoying when you're forced to talk to someone you don't really want to talk to and you don't have time and blah blah blah, and then you have to tell them, hey, could you please so I understand the social dynamics at some point get kind of annoying, but you see, just making that statement, people should be able to understand that, okay, you're annoying right now, and they shouldn't take offense. The fact that people would take offense in these kinds of situations is the problem. That is the problem. People should understand when they're being useful, when they're not being useful. And they should know this. This should be part of your education. There is no reason as to why we should wait for life to take place before they learn these things. Life might never take place. It might never happen. Or it might never happen in a controlled way in which those students, I guess, at that particular time, would learn from the experience. And so you end up by having arrogant people who don't know how to act, and they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and it's bad for everybody. So to reiterate, TLDR, if you will, if there was a bigger concentration on science and education, I think it would favor the alt-right significantly and would allow the current and next generations to do significantly better for themselves. And from a perspective of laws, the laws that should be pushed by the alt-right should be freedom of association and lower taxes. That's it. So that you can take control of your world. So that you as an individual can always decide to go against the government. That should be the biggest thing. The government shouldn't be the end-all be-all of your life. If the government makes a mistake, or you feel the government makes a mistake, you should be allowed to create your own community with your own rules. Not all rules, but you can't allow murder even in those communities. Police should still be able to arrest you for murder, because at some point it gets a bit crazy. But the point is that you should be able to take matters into your own hand without the government stopping you. That is the biggest part here. The government should be allowed to stop you from creating your own little world, from creating your own little communities where you can strive. Okay? Thank you for listening. Donate to my Patreon if at all possible. And goodbye.